I was thinking about making St. Jack at the time, and the leading character is very gregarious and so on, and Benny struck me as being like that. So we got along, we made St. Jack, it was a great experience. In fact, before St. Jack opened, Paramount saw it and hired Benny off of that performance to play the lead opposite Audrey Hepburn in a movie they were going to make called Bloodline. Meanwhile, I was editing St. Jack. He went off and shot Bloodline, fell in love with Audrey. Audrey fell in love with him. She was married, he was married, they had an affair. And I remember him coming back to my kitchen in Bel Air later that year saying, "Oh, Peter, I'm in love. Audrey, my sweet Audrey, she's a saint."
Are you in love right now, Mr. Russo? I mean, personally speaking?
Personally speaking, no. What about you?
That's a silly question. I'm married.
That's why I asked.
There's something nostalgic in his performances in those movies.
Well, it's star performances. It's star turns. In other words, you feel that you're watching Ben Gazzara as opposed to Ben Gazzara playing a role. You feel that, well, that's sort of like Ben. And it is a lot like Ben. See, my favorite kind of casting and my favorite kind of acting is where you don't feel them acting. So that's why I'm opposed to so much of the acting that's going on today, where you say, oh, isn't that a great performance? Well, I don't really want to see a performance. I want to see something happening that's real. And movie stars, by their nature, were not acting. They were being. I'm talking about movie stars like John Wayne or Cary Grant or Audrey Hepburn, or the movie stars of the golden age were not acting, in quotes. I mean, they did occasionally. Bogart would act in The Caine Mutiny or The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, but what made him a star was when he was being Bogart.
Right.
So Gazzara we took that and kind of tried to create a kind of a Ben Gazzara persona with the character. I mean, I think that was part of what we were doing, finding him in the character.
Yeah, it's definitely in that tradition. And there's a real sadness in him in both of those movies. I don't know why. In St. Jack, there's a sadness because you can feel like this is a guy who's left his country and gone off, and you don't really know what's happened in his life, but all kinds of things have taken him further and further away, and he still has this aspiration. And They All Laughed. You don't have any of that sense of this mysterious. You don't have any indication of what his story might be, really, because we just join him in the moment and stay with him in the moment, and he has all these different relationships with all these women who he seems to love, but they're all just things he's kind of got brewing, but there's the same sadness anyway. Every time you go to a close-up of it, I guess because he's kind of falling in love with Audrey Hepburn for the whole movie, and for the whole movie, he knows it's not going to pan out.
Yeah, that's true, and I think he's also an unhappy guy. I think he's been unhappy in his relationships. He's obviously been married and divorced. His kids love him, but there's a problem with the wife.
Yeah.
That's all hinted at, but it's there. He's been through the game of love. He's been through the wars of love.
Yeah.
And he's come out of the other side, and he knows it's not easy. It can kill you.
Right.
His heart's been broken a few times. He's broken a few hearts. In other words, it's sort of like Benny and me.
Are you slippery as the Dickens, Mr. Russo?
I don't know, but I'm dizzy.
And I thought, okay, so I'm going to write this for Ben and Audrey. And I was going to play the other part myself, and I thought, I'm too old for it. I'm too close to Ben. The guy should be younger, so I thought I'd use John Ritter. I called John. I said, John, I got a part for you in a picture. You're playing sort of a younger version of me. He says, when do we start? But I didn't want to make it about Ben and me and John and so on. I wanted to clothe it within an established American genre. So romantic comedy / detective picture.
You guys do blow your cover.
No. No, but we spoke.
You spoke.
For a while.
For a while.
Long enough.
Mm-hmm.
A little longer.
I figured.
But they didn't connect us.
Yet.
When I first saw that movie, I felt like it took me a long time to have any idea of what was going on. You're very intrigued when you see it because people are spying on each other and everybody's up to something, but you have no idea what they're up to for quite a long time.
Yes.
You don't really reveal what these guys do. You kind of get the sense they're sort of detectives, but you don't really get exactly what's going on for quite a long time. And then eventually what you get is that none of that has anything to do with what the movie's really about. The movie's about these two people getting interested in each other and this romance developing and these two and these two and these relationships that have already happened and where they stand in them, and it's all just about these people intermingling.
They All Laughed was a very human movie. It
Completely personal.
It was completely personal.
Yeah, moment by moment you feel like, well, that happened to Peter at some point, and this person is based on so-and-so, and probably this person is based on the person who's playing it.
Well, that's exactly right, and the situations were real, had happened. I mean, for example, Colleen does that touch assist on John Ritter.
Feel my finger.
Feel my finger, feel my finger. It's very funny. Colleen herself did it on me.
Well, how did you know her, Colleen?
That character, the Christy Miller, is so based on Colleen. In fact, as I said earlier, but I really meant it, every part was not only written for the actors who ended up playing the part, but it was based on them.
Was she a singer?
Colleen was a singer, is a singer. She's quite good too. And originally in the character was going to be a jazz singer, you know, singing on some little bistro down in the village. But then I thought, jazz singer, you know, in New York, it's pretty predictable. It'd be funny if she was singing country music in New York.
But she's not. That's not something she's
That's
done
not
before.
something she sang, but she did it well. And all of that singing that she does is live. There's no pre-recording. She does it
I
live.
thought it might be because I know on that Long Last Love you did that.
Yes,
you recorded the music live, but then I was I remember watching the movie. There's all this cutting, and
We shot it with 3 cameras.
Oh, well, that
We
explains.
we shot not the last sequence, but the one in City Limits when she's singing the first time, Kentucky Nights. That was shot with 3 cameras, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple other scenes were not shot with 3 cameras, maybe 2.
But all of it was recorded.
But
live.
all of it was live.
And it's mixed. It sounds like a
Yeah,
studio recording.
We did it with the band and everything.
Yeah.
It was fun.
One thing that's very appealing about the movie is that everybody, most of the characters in the movie don't know each other. They meet during the scenes, and yet they become friends instantly. They seem to be, and they enter into each other's lives very freely and kind of continue on, and that's part of the fantasy of it. It's a very kind of sweet fantasy of all these friendships and romances just kind of spontaneously developing.
Well, you know, that's a fantasy. Wouldn't you like to meet people that you instantly have a rapport with?
And it happens.
And it does happen
happens.
now
It's just
and
a movie
again.
that's filled with it, and that's sort of what it's about.
It's what it's about. It's also about kind of sexual connection, that kind of immediate, visceral thing, which Ben plays so well in the cab with Patty, for example. He says,
Yeah.
"Pull over here, Sam." He says, "My name's Deborah. You know, that's why I called you Sam."
You're just a romantic.
Huh? What's wrong with romance?
Nothing wrong with it. It's just hard to come by.
Never had much of that, huh, kid?
Not much.
Patty was a top model, and I saw her on the cover of Esquire. And Patty was a tough girl, with a very soft underneath, but she'd been bruised. She'd been modeling since she was 16. She'd had a few pretty ugly incidents. And so she was, you know, she'd been around.
I can't believe you drive a taxi. You ought to be an actress or a model or something. You're gorgeous.
Thanks. I used to do a little modeling. It's a pain in the ass.
John Ritter became, I would say, one of my closest friends, maybe my closest friend. I had met him when he was 20 years old, and he came to read for me for the Last Picture Show.
Does he have a part in Nickelodeon? or
Yes,
is it-
that was
yeah.
his first big feature. Truth is, I wanted him to play the lead, but the studio, they wanted to go with stars. So I gave John a supporting part. We kept making it bigger all the way through it. And there's some shtick in that, and he's wonderful in it. And he's one of the most natural actors I'd ever worked with. I just couldn't believe it. He never seemed to be acting. And he did it like, you know, like falling off a log. So I always wanted to do another picture with him, and he was a hit in Three's Company, which he hadn't shot yet when we did Nickelodeon. In fact, he said, "I'm doing a pilot for a series called Three's Company." I said, "Oh, well, what if it's a hit? Then I won't be able to use you whenever I want you." He said, "Oh, it won't be a hit." So, yeah. So 4 years later, he was one of the biggest stars on TV. And I called him up and I said, "It's during your hiatus. It's a romantic comedy. You want to do it?" And he said, "What's the start date?" And so that was that.